Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Michigan Main Street Stories. I am Phil Ike, and here in Lansing, Michigan, specifically Old Town Lansing, to talk to my two special guests, and they are the Old Town Commercial Association President Ben Dowd and one of the original founders of the OTCA, Jamie Schriner. Good morning, people.
Good morning.
Jamie, first question for you. Take us all the way back to the very beginning. How did the OTCA begin?
So I actually was not one of the original founders.
Oh.
Yeah, the OTCA started in 1996 when I was still in college.
When did you hop on board?
I came here in 2005.
Okay.
So the OTCA started, there was an organization here called the Old Town Business and Arts Development Association, or OTBATA. We have really bad acronyms. And OTBATA did Blues Fest and Jazz Fest and these festivals, but they really wanted an organization to kind of do the back end organizing. You know, they were a bunch of artists, and they wanted folks to actually do the work. Yeah,
they wanted the art part, and they needed that really difficult back end help to put events together. Yeah.
So they created the OTCA in 1996, and we were one of the original state of Michigan Main Street programs under LISC, but then that program kind of went away. So I joined in 2005. And we really wanted to do a market analysis, but it was $8,000. And as a teeny tiny nonprofit, $8,000 is a lot of money. And so I had some folks say, hey, there's this program. You guys used to be a part of it, but the state recreated it. It was at MEDC and MISHTA. And you guys should join, and they'll pay for a market analysis for you. So that was the entire push, was $8,000 for a market analysis, and a whole group of volunteers came together, and we started to work on things, and we were kind of following Main Street at the time, or so we thought. And then we actually became a Main Street program. And so that was 2005, 2006.
And honestly, in a lot of the Main Streets I've talked to, that is kind of how that process starts, is you a group of really dedicated people saying, hey, we got to make something happen. Maybe a rough around the edges, very grassroots, low on funding, trying to figure out how do we do this. We're buying into things like placemaking and downtowns and other things, and we start kind of circling Main Street and picking out things. And then a lot of times it gets to the point where you're like, okay, we really have to tap in officially here to this. So I'm so glad that you guys created this organization, part of Michigan Main Street. I drove into Old Town Lansing. It's absolutely beautiful here. Finally, we're having sun and flowers on trees and things like that. It's absolutely gorgeous. So, Ben, question for you. If somebody has never been here before, they know of Lansing, obviously, but they've never actually been in Old Town Lansing, how would you describe it to that person?
It's a great question, and I'll tell you, I am new to Lansing. No, I'm not. I can't say new anymore, I suppose. No. It's been 7 years.
Yeah.
But Old Town was a place I was just drawn to when I first moved to Lansing. Not only the beautiful scenery, the shops, the restaurants, but the people are the coolest people in Lansing, and I say that with like wholeheartedness. I loved walking into shops, and people were just so attentive to who you were, and it didn't matter what day it was, what you were wearing, or any of that, but it really is we claim ourselves self-identified as the arts district of Lansing, but really we truly are. If we think of the events that have been hosted in Old Town for decades, it really centers around art in many different forms. And so allowing a space for folks to do what they love has really been what Old Town kind of has been all about. So that sense of community and that sense of culture has been so important in making Old Town what it is today. And so when people come around now and they've never been, or they're making their first trip to Lansing, they have to stop by. It's just one of those places that you really just have to experience. Get out of your car, walk around, go down to the fish ladder, check out the river trail, come walk through some of the shops. You're going to laugh. You're going to smell some great things. You're going to eat some good food. You're going to smell some not good things sometimes. But it really is truly, when we call it a destination in Michigan, it legitimately is.
Yeah, I thought the same when I drove into town. and I parked to take out all my gear, was that you really have to get out and walk around down here. And that is such a critical part. I mean, we talk about it in Main Street all the time, is that walkability, but also here you see that attraction to walkability. It almost encourages people like, no, you have to find a place to park and then go walk around to really experience this place. Jamie, anything to add about how would you describe Old Town?
You know, it's this giant, weird, crazy, fun, dysfunctional family. And it is this incredible community. And Ben said it's the people. And we're all little off. We're a little crazy. I think you have to be to come into a historic district and open up these small businesses and put everything you have on the line to live out your dreams. And so it's a really great combination of very, very diverse and different people, but somehow it all works. We're like one big giant family.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that too, specifically with the arts community here. I mean, you go into a lot of communities and say, well, we've got great restaurants or we get great retail, but this is one of the few places that, like, we are of an incredibly dense arts community. A lot of specifically smaller districts and areas have kind of their one art place or their one arts organization, but it sounds like you're full of them here in just a small area.
Yeah, well, and then the other exciting part too is you don't have to go into a gallery to see art. I mean, there are murals everywhere. We have public sculptures from our festivals and events everywhere. I mean, it's the buildings down here, the historic buildings, I see them as art. I mean, it's just a wonderful, great neighborhood.
Yeah. Within the Main Street community at large, and specifically here in Michigan, Lansing's unique in that there's two Main Street districts. There's this one, obviously, with Old Town, and then downtown Lansing. So, Ben, question for you. Why does that exist? How are they different? What kind of collaborations have you guys done?
Yeah, so you're right. It is very interesting. We talk about that all the time. Really how fortunate we are to have two Main Street communities.
Fortunate, why?
Because downtown and Old Town are two very, very different spaces. When you think of downtown Lansing, you think of the political climate and really the needs of that downtown community. And when you think of Old Town, it's so close, but yet so far removed. So when we think of how we represent our businesses through the Commercial Association, it's very different, and the needs are very different than what happens downtown at many times. There is a lot of cross collaboration, however. Working closely with their Main Street has been just wonderful. We make sure that we are very partnered on events, cross-promoting. We sit down and talk regularly about how we can enhance one another's districts. When it comes to safety in the community, we partner on those types of things. So we're really within a mile of each other, right? And many of the things are similar, but yet you could never compare the two districts as the same.
I really love you saying that for a lot of reasons, because sometimes we think that, especially with the different points of Main Street and the Main Street program, we almost approach it, or we could, if we're not experienced with it, think about it almost like a cookie cutter template that this comes into the community and you do this, you check this box, and then boom, you've got a revitalized neighborhood. But I think what you're saying really points out the fact that Main Street is individual. The principles are there, but the application of them can be completely different. And it highlights here that downtown is a mile away from Old Town, completely different people, vibes, communities, and then making that work is saying, how can we work on this city together and this community together?
Yeah, and I think being a Main Street community in both areas, we get what needs to happen and how it needs to happen within our communities, but that collaboration is so key, and it really has, especially during the pandemic, we could not have really survived without the partnership with our downtown partners, because we all were business entities trying to make it. And how do we figure out collectively what that looks like, and to have somebody, that resource for one another is a benefit. If we look at other Main Street communities that aren't as fortunate to have another director a mile away that they can talk to or meet up and have coffee and vent with. And, it really is important for the livelihood of the entire city, for both of our districts to work together. And the Main Street program does that. Yeah,
and especially so important in relatively smaller communities, because if there's any sort of conflict or like, oh, you're the district across the river. I mean, you've essentially split your very limited resources in half. And now your challenges become even bigger. How do we fix these? So having that collaboration within a small community is so important.
And I would just say it hasn't always been really positive. There were moments when people actually did see it the way that you mentioned it. Like, we have limited resources. Why are we doing this? And thankfully, I mean, as Ben mentioned, the relationship between downtown and Old Town is amazing. I think that there are a number of us who would hope that we would see additional Main Street programs in Lansing. Rio Town is a great neighborhood. The East Side is a great neighborhood that we'd love to even see more, because there are these really unique places in the city when we all work together. It's kind of that, rising tide lifts all the boats.
Yeah. Were there any steps that you took to kind of strengthen that collaboration, or to try to persuade people, no, this is advantageous for everybody to have these two programs, and kind of build those bridges? Was there anything that you did that helped that specifically?
I think on our behalf, it was vulnerability. We were in a spot where we were without a director. And our board stepped up to really cover that time, and partnering with Downtown, who had a director and was able to give us some guidance or bounce things off of, because myself as the president would attend these Main Street meetings, and I'd walk away and still have my day job to do. And so 2 weeks later, when I'm trying to go back through and implement something, I go, oh my God, what do I need to do? So it was just almost out of necessity.
Yeah.
And then as we started doing our search for a new director here in Old Town, we really involved Downtown as well, because realistically, they're a very close network, the two directors in one city. So keeping them involved in really what's going on. One of the best success stories of our collaboration was the social districts that came to Lansing. So working between Downtown, Old Town, and then, as Jamie mentioned, Rio Town, we were able to go collaboratively to the city and lobby for the social districts to become a thing. Really, Downtown took the lead on that, which was super helpful with our support. But what a great asset to have that still within our community, and it's just wonderful.
Yeah,
So
one of the gems coming out of COVID. Obviously, it's easy to talk about all of the terrible negative things that have happened, but in social districts and in kind of expanding the perception of, well, what can we actually do with our communities, has been one of the shining moments to come out of this whole thing. This year, Ben, Match on Main, first Match on Main recipient here in Old Town. Tell me about, first, what is Match on Main? What got you interested in the program, how it could help Old Town, and who's receiving this grant?
yeah, so I really have to give it up to our new executive director, Robert. He started in his role at the beginning of January. Match on Main rolled out, and he said, we're going to do this.
Nice.
In the past few years, we just haven't had the capacity from a board perspective to really run through the program. So basically what it is, our businesses have an opportunity to apply for matching funds to do something within their business. It can be an array of things, mostly with improvements up to $25,000. And then they get $25,000. They put in a smaller portion on their behalf. But what a huge investment.
Yep.
So Main Street is important because it has to go to a Main Street community or redevelopment ready community. But we have to manage those grant funds, right? So the money comes to us as the organization, and then we work with the business to do that. So we're so proud this year. Elderly Instruments was our very first recipient of the Match on Main program. And I'll tell you what, it was a tough decision. We had to bring in an outside person even to review applications, so we had no biases in the process, to really understand how to go through, because we have a lot of great people doing great things within the community. So to try and narrow it down to one or two people that I mean, they all deserve it, but whose application comes in and showcases the best need for this.
Yeah,
So
that's one of the most difficult sides from just a community building perspective, because you do have access to wonderful resources through Main Street, through MEDC, through other foundations, grant sources, things like that. But you have to pick somebody, and you wish that you had $200 million. You're getting 25 and you're getting 25.
the Oprah effect all over town.
Everybody's getting 25. We love our small businesses, but then you end up with one grant of $25,000. Where do we put this, and who do we give it to? Always kind of that double-edged sword there. But love Elderly Instruments. I don't want to say I grew up there, but I grew up in Elma and would make a regular pilgrimage to Elderly, and I couldn't play a lick on any guitar, but I wanted to touch them and I wanted to play it, and had dreams. And I'll be swinging by there for one of our business highlights, and a couple other businesses that I think we should highlight as well. Tell me about, Jamie, Old Town General Store.
So the Old Town General Store, gosh, I'm trying to remember how many years she's been here. Maybe
11,
10, 11?
I know she celebrated 10th.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rhea.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
should know
sorry,
that.
Rhea. We're old, we forget. But it's this great little store with tons of Michigan-made products. You're going to a party, you need to get a bottle of wine or a 6-pack of beer and some snacks. It's the place to go. You need to get a gift for someone who's coming into town and you want something Lansing-based or Michigan-based or just unique. It's the place to go. They have a beautiful courtyard in the back that you never know. But pre-pandemic, they hosted all kinds of concerts and events in the back, and we're hoping to see that again in the future. But it is just this amazing little boutique with a beautiful mural on the side, painted by a local artist, Barb Branilovich. And yeah,
Very cool.
check it out.
I think communities that have general stores like this, a lot of times take them for granted. We had one in Bay City that came in briefly, a small business that started, and it was amazing what a gap it filled. They're unfortunately not in business anymore, but I'd be sitting in my office going, I need some AA batteries right now. And usually the option is I got to get in my car, I got to drive out to the chain district outside of town and go to Home Depot or Walmart or whatever it is to get whatever these random things I needed. But here was this general store that I could just literally walk across the street to, and they had batteries and cleaning supplies and little Bay City things. And it was such a blessing for the community to have a general store like this here in Old Town. It's just a great gift.
Yeah, she doesn't necessarily have batteries and some of those things, but one of our few larger chain businesses, we have a Speedway gas station across the street where you could grab those things. But Rhea really has these, she spends time working with local and Michigan-based and Lansing-based folks to create these amazing products.
Awesome. I think I'm looking forward to stopping by
You
there.
should.
Temple building. Tell me about this temple building. I don't know who wants to take that.
Jamie, you got that.
Okay, Jamie, go.
So I have a long history with the temple building. The temple used to be, it originally was a church. It's actually the third building built on the site, the third that started as a church. They started very small, outgrew it, knocked it down, built a bigger one, outgrew it, knocked it down, built a bigger one. And the Bethel Temple was there, a local church, and they moved to a larger facility in the probably early 2000s. And it sat empty, and it is a gorgeous building. And thankfully, there were some local folks who said, we don't want to see this get knocked down. And at the time, there was actually a drugstore who was coming in and looking at the other side of the block and wanted to raise the entire block and put a chain grocery store there, or a chain drugstore there. Thankfully, property owners held out, and at the same time, other property owners said, we're going to renovate this and we're going to turn it into a nightclub. And there were actually some pretty big acts who came through. George Clinton, like some really, there were some great folks who came through. It closed down. It did really, really well when MSU students were in session. And then in the summertime, it just kind of faltered. And unfortunately, they couldn't keep up with it. So in about 2007, it shut down. At that point in time, I was the Main Street manager and executive director, and I took folks through trying to get someone to either buy or rent or do something with the building. And the closest we came is we had a Cirque du Soleil training facility.
Really?
And because it had such high ceilings and we were this close, and then they just decided no. So it sat vacant and empty, and one of the things that we didn't necessarily mention about this community, with it being an arts community, we are also, what started this community was the LGBTQ community as well. Yeah. And we are very open in accepting. I mean, pretty much our motto is we don't care what you look like, where you're from, who you love. You want to help, grab a shovel and get in here.
Yeah, we want your help. Come here.
Exactly. And we had some folks who were looking at the building who didn't necessarily share that same perspective and attitude. And we had some local folks. I was married to one of them, purchased the building, and we cleaned it out. We tried to get it set as an event center. Zuby's, which is one of our great bars and restaurants, actually opened as a result of it to try to get it opened, and it just continued to sit. Michigan Community Capital is a statewide CDFI, and they started looking at the building. They had rented space. Their home base is in Lansing, but they work all over Michigan. I've been on their board for a long time. And they saw this building and saw it as that big, you're coming into Lansing and here's this building. And so they slowly, after years, kind of decided, all right, we're going to take this on. And so it's now going to have commercial space on the first floor, beautiful apartments upstairs. It's going to bring a new business. We'll have a great new coffee shop coming in with hopefully, I'm not going to knock on things, a liquor license. As well. So a great place to hang out, and all these wonderful new residents who will be in our neighborhood. So it has sat vacant for years. And to see activity going on, I mean, don't get me wrong, construction is hard, and we will all be very happy to see the construction equipment gone. But the results of it will be absolutely amazing.
Two great things I love about that story is, one, the struggle communities have with filling vacant buildings. Because that's not a individual to Old Town thing. You go into almost all of our communities. If they're not growing exponentially, they're struggling in some way. We have this beautiful building that has sat for 20 years. And that's such a plus of the Main Street program, is that you almost have in that program an advocate for these critical spaces within our communities. And if you don't have that, there's a great chance that that building sits and sits and sits. If you don't have somebody like a Main Street director bringing people into that building, do you want to buy this? Do you want to buy this? And then the other part of that too is that it's a great indicator of your community in that you're very aware of what the community wants, and the community is willing to say, yes, you could come in here, but we're not quite lining up with the vision for what we have for ourselves. And so we're going to say no. And sometimes communities fall into the trap of, we've seen that building vacant for 20 years, and we are just going to take anybody and we have to get it filled, which can be a good move, but sometimes it can be a really bad move.
Results in Dollar Generals.
Yeah. It results in things that aren't reflective of who we are as a district or who we are as a city. And I commend you guys for having this sense just as a community to say, we could bite on this and we could say yes to this, but we see the potentially negative things for everybody if we do. And so we're just going to wait, and we're just going to wait. And it sounds like it paid off big with having something like this mixed use coming into this building.
Yeah, we could not be more excited. And as someone who has spent more time than I want to remember cleaning the building, trying to make sure it was structurally sound with others, to see an organization come in and fix it up, it is, I mean, I smile. Again, hating construction, loving the transformation. I smile every time I go by it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to end up being a great strength for Old Town. Ben, as a community as a whole, what would you see as this district's strengths?
So I was thinking about, as you were just talking about like vacant buildings and things, and one of our strengths is that we really don't often have a problem with vacancy. We have people calling or stopping in regularly trying to find a space for their business.
And can I just tell you too, when we started the Main Street program, we had a 90% commercial vacancy rate.
Wow.
And now we're nearly 100% full.
Wow.
Right? So it's phenomenal. We really are, we could make a waiting list right now of folks that want to bring their business into Old Town. And so it really is, it's a strength only because our folks who have invested into the community have really valued and keep their space great. And everybody kind of pitches in and does, what Jamie said, grab a shovel. Like this isn't about, we're a small organization. We can't do everything for the entire community.
Yeah.
If you're moving into this neighborhood, it comes with a sense of responsibility of maintaining it. Right. So our strength is really that we are really good at making things happen. In whatever fashion that looks like.
Nice and scrappy.
That's the perfect term, actually.
Yeah.
We use that often because things just need to happen.
Yeah.
And, some people may not love the way that it happens, but it gets done. But what that leads to is a place that people just want to be part of. So many of our businesses have been here for decades now because they invested in it, and some have expanded. We've got Summer Schriner who had a store and now expanded to open a second store.
Wow.
I mean, two totally different stores, but there was the belief in this my other dream can happen in the same district, right?
Yeah, and the desire and the value of that, because a lot of times businesses will say, I'm doing really well here, but I'm going to go try this other city for my second store or my second business, or I'm going to kind of branch out. But the fact that somebody sees the value and the future of this place to be able to say 2.0 is going right across the block because I want to be here.
Definitely. And I think that kind of resonates too in the past couple of years. We've had some new businesses come in. We've also had businesses that needed to relocate and were really struggling whether or not they could stay in the Old Town community, and this is where they wanted to be. And it was really interesting to see how things worked out, and it shuffled around, but it also allowed for many of our businesses to expand, which when you're already in a space, expansion is tough. You're gridlocked into that. But it's so amazing if we look at this really pre-pandemic till now. If you were to walk the district, it's very different because folks had the ability to make different investments in their business, and it really is. It's wonderful.
That beautiful messiness of organic growth.
Yes.
I mean, that's really where you see the strength in communities, where it's kind of messy, and at first it may not make sense. Like, well, why are they just shuffling around? But then you end up with, in a matter of a year, something considerably more useful for the community and just more interesting a lot of times. And I kind of want to take your brains, both of you, and think to the future of this place. And Jamie, question for you: What do you want for the future of Old Town? Where do you want it to go? What do you think it needs?
I'd love to see sort of our boundaries and borders expand a bit. I'd love to see our diversity expand. And I'd love to just see us keep the same strengths and sense of community as we grow. As Ben mentioned, there's a waiting list of folks who would love to come down here and get down here. And what would really be great, a lot of people just think like, oh, this place just happens. They got a bunch of money and it's
they're in Lansing.
Yeah, somebody's out there like shoveling the streets and they get paid to do that. And the reality is that doesn't happen.
Yep.
We have Robert now, which is amazing and wonderful because we haven't even had somebody leading the community. I mean, Ben and Shannon and our other board members did an amazing job keeping things together. But I really hope that as we grow, we keep the scrappy sense about us that, if you see something out there and you want to see it done, don't wait for someone to ask you to do it. Don't try to find someone else to do it. Just get it done. Pick up the piece of trash you see on the sidewalk. You see the building next door that looks bad with their storefront. Ask them what you can do to help them make it look better and improve it.
Can I buy you a plant or something?
Exactly. I mean, there are flowers and stuff out in the community now that have been planted, split from other people's gardens and, literally in bloom. My boyfriend and I went out last fall and planted 1,000 bulbs in the community just in random spots, because we thought this will look cool. Let's try it.
We need some flowers.
Yeah. But that's the spirit that so many people have down here. It's Ben mentioned it, that sometimes folks won't necessarily always agree with how things get done, and we're working on that. But, it's really go out there and just do things and make it better. And I hope that other folks come in and know this place is this place because of the hard work of all the people down here. There's no pot of money somewhere. There's no staff out there, making lots of stuff happen. It's the community coming together and doing things.
Ben, what do you want for the future of this place?
What'd you say?
A pony.
A pony, yes. Ponies and donkeys for everybody. Jamie really hit it on, and I think one of the great things we're going to do in the very near future, actually kicking off the end of this month, is the community visioning and strategic planning with all of our stakeholders in the community. So I think it's great for us to have our visions of that, but I'm really excited to understand what the community is looking forward to. It's that whole concept of, you don't want somebody up in the top tier pushing down what should happen. We all have great ideas, but my great idea might not be what's best for everybody else. However, that being said, I really do hope that we keep the sense of community that has been so pivotal and what has brought so much success to the neighborhood. We can do different things. We can put in different initiatives. We can work with different people. But if we keep true to the self identity that has been around, then I think we definitely we win there.
I love that, because sometimes you can chase growth, and because you want your community to prosper, and you want to support your small businesses, and you want just a richer, more vibrant community. But sometimes if you do that the wrong way, you end up losing the soul. And you get a lot more stuff and you get some more people, but you've also lost something really important in the process. And so hearing both of you guys say we want to continue improving and we want to grow in certain ways, but at the same time we've got something special and we want to hold on to it. Love hearing that. Moving on to placemaking. I mean, one of the blessings again of COVID, people starting to think about, what streets can we shut down? How can we re-navigate our communities? How can we shape them a little bit to not only economically help our small businesses, but just to create a greater sense of pride and relationship? What have you guys taken any sort of placemaking initiatives or projects that you want to highlight?
Not in that big of a sense. So we did during 2020, when we first were shutting down, some of our clearly all of our events were canceled.
Yeah.
But we wanted to have some sort of event. We already had put a permit in to close the street. And so rather than hosting the event that would have normally happened in August, our art feast, we just brought in some live music in the street. We put up tables and chairs, and we encouraged people to shop the businesses, come out and dine in the street. It was 104 degrees that day. And so, it was one of those things where there's no shade in the middle of a concrete street.
Yeah. Sure.
So it was great. We're unique in that most of our alleyways and places that some other communities can take advantage of really are our
driveways,
our thoroughways for our residents and our businesses. So we're a little bit landlocked in that. The social districts certainly have helped with that and ensuring that we have folks out and being active in outdoor space. But from a placemaking, what we did see also, Jamie mentioned the mural on the side of the Old Town General Store. So that Barb designed that, and then they brought the whole community out. Anybody who wanted to come out that day or the couple of days rather, could be a part of that placemaking.
Very cool.
And that was the second version of it. The first version happened when the building was first occupied after it sat vacant for years, and Barb had done a giant paint by number at that point too. But the mural had, it was fading and chipping and
right.
yeah. So
Doing what paint does outside.
Right. Yeah. But we certainly have seen, we've had different, even prior to pandemic, a lot of initiatives throughout the city to bring pieces. And we have several property owners who have paid to bring muralists in and just enhance the spaces. We were very fortunate over the past couple of years to work with the city to redo our mini park on the corner of Chavez and Turner here, and hoping for more development in that space to make sure it's a very welcoming and friendly place. So, placemaking is super important. We've got a couple of projects that are up our sleeve right now.
Tell me about one.
Okay. We had a former director, Megan Barrett, who had been here for a period of time, who has since passed. And working with her family now, the organization, we had purchased a sculpture in her honor, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe more. That had been out in the community, had a little bit of creative artism done to it by others.
Some roadware.
Yes. So the artist has restructured that, and we are going to actually be installing that along with some benches and plants and creating a space on the corner of Chavez and Washington. And so it's things like that when families get involved and they say, let's make this happen. We've already got a piece. Let's find a permanent home for it. That's a huge entrance into our community at that intersection.
And I love that too, because sometimes with placemaking, we go into it with, again, kind of a cookie cutter attitude, not necessarily intentionally, but we might not know any better. And we get really excited about public art and we want to cover every vacant space or brick with something. But here is a great example of great placemaking, in that it's very community centered. That here is this sculpture dedicated to somebody so important to our community, and we're going to create a place not only that is beautiful to folks who may not have known her and her contribution, but here is a place that we can honor not only her, but our community as a whole. And so it's very community driven, community focused. It grows up out of the community as opposed to just slapping art everywhere, which can be cool. But to me, this is considerably more meaningful.
And we have another location. So Robert Busby, who's in the, I don't know if you can see on camera behind me.
Oh, yeah.
Robert Busby was one of the original folks who started everything in Old Town. And he passed away, now it's been more than 15 years. And Robert, we did a garden for him. And as you drive through Old Town, you see these bright colors and crazy art and all these things. And Robert was a really quiet, he was an artist himself, but was a very kind of quiet person until you got to know him. And we created a garden in his honor by the fish ladder that's all grasses and a sculpture in the very like serene kind of a place. And we had two other folks who were very prominent in our community. Tom Arnold was one of them, and John Sears being another who tragically passed away in the last year as well. And we're working with some other local artists to add to Robert's garden, to create places to honor these folks that if you got to know them, you know that, well, Tom and John, it was a little more obvious they were a little more crazy than Robert visibly, but all wonderful people. And it's creating this other kind of quiet place for them that with things done in their honor. And so, I mean, I think we also have murals in memory of folks. I mean, there's one behind my garage in memory of Wanda, who was one of our neighborhood characters who've been down here for years, who passed away a year ago. And it's, there's just crazy art everywhere. So
what I also love about this is what you're doing and what you're creating is also reflective of the people that you're honoring. And that goes right to the heart of the community, in that we're not just creating a plaque and not knocking people that buy plaques, but here you're taking it to the next level, and you're saying, how can we create something that not only honors Robert but looks like Robert or feels like Robert, or I could go in there and I could be, yes, this is his personality. And it says so much just about the arts in this community, because that is such an artistic touch. What's the deeper meaning of this? What's the bigger picture of this? What's the emotional connection of this, as opposed to just this looks nice? Love it. Let's talk about the Main Street program as a whole, kind of looking at it big picture. Why has the Main Street program and Old Town being part of it been so critical to its life, its vibrancy? How has it helped you?
So I think in the beginning, I mentioned we thought we were doing Main Street. We weren't.
Yeah.
And we would become really focused on one thing. We were really great at events, and we've always been fabulous at events. Some of the other things, not so much. And what we really weren't great at was actually being organized and making sure that we were taking all the steps to get things done. So it wasn't just that panic moment with a couple of people like the day of something doing things. And Main Street really, kind of helped us to herd the cats. That, we had all these great people with wonderful ideas, but we'd have a meeting and we'd talk about what we were going to do, and we're going to do all this great stuff. And then a month would go by and we'd come back and we say, what got done? I don't know, but we should do this, and talk about all these great things again, and nothing, would get done. So Main Street, I think, really helped to bring folks together. And I mean, we'll always be grassroots. We'll always be the weird folks in Main Street. But I think it really helped to organize us and get us to a point where we could complete things. And we are professional in some ways. We'll always be true to ourselves, but it helped us to really move things forward.
Yes, I love all of that. I mean, you have this creative spirit and you have passion for the community, but a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. We don't know how we can do things better. And then we try to really, I'm just going to work, or I'm just going to spend 18 hours a day trying to figure it out. Or like you said, frantically last minute, can you go and buy some rakes? And yeah, I'll go buy some rakes. But here in Main Street, you have a program and you have a process and you have people helping you and teaching you. You're working way too hard on this. Here's a plan. And then you can spend your effort and your energy moving forward on that plan and actually seeing results. Ben, what about you? What do you see as the benefit of Main Street here?
So I think to me, and coming into this, when I moved to Lansing and getting involved with Old Town, first time I had been indoctrined into the Main Street world. And the great thing about that is there are so many other communities that are doing this, and Main Street has done the work to figure out the best process for us. So it's not just abiding by some set of guidelines. It's truly embracing the tools and the resources that people have studied and they have figured out, and they already have like presented it with a nice little bow to you that says, if you follow this, or this is what has worked in other areas, obviously make it your own. But that alone is well worth anything else. I mean,
Well, and I think too, like the ability, talking about the other communities. I remember when I worked down here, I thought we are the only community who has faced this issue. Like, this is completely and totally unique to us.
No one can help us.
Yeah, no one has ever been here before. And then I went to the first meeting after we became a Main Street program and talked to some of the other Main Street managers. And it was so funny because I could almost name the community players when they were talking through their scenario. I'm like, oh, we have that person, we have that issue.
Yeah.
And so I think the ability to come together with other communities, even if it's just venting, but to talk through things. And then the we joke, I used to work for a vaccine manufacturer, and we had a significant amount of R&D, which was research and development. But then I quickly learned in Main Street, R&D means rip off and duplicate. And you want to give that distance, so you're not doing the same thing as your neighbor, but take something and make it your own and run with it, because somebody has come up with it. Someone has done it, and someone can share what you should, or probably more importantly, what you shouldn't do moving forward.
I used to be a teacher, and I remember going through college and professors saying exactly that is, you need to get great at stealing good ideas, because that's one, how you survive.
Yeah.
And two, it saves you a lot of work and time and effort. Well, why figure this out, and why spend the next 7 years figuring out how do I build this place from scratch, when somebody and multiple people can come in and say, let us help you. Let's save you 30 years on your journey towards revitalization, and we're going to give you some tools that can help you along the way. Everybody benefits, all the way from the people actually doing the work and saying, okay, I love the fact we have a plan, I'm seeing results in my community, to the community at large, because now we can have better things sooner, as opposed to Phil is trying to do everything himself and it took him 45 years, but gosh darn it, he finally got there. I mean, I think if we could get there in 10, everybody would be a little bit happier. So love hearing this stuff. If somebody wants to connect with Old Town, where can we find you? Website, social media, give me all that stuff.
Yeah, so iloveoldtown.org is our website. Follow us on Old Town Lansing for Facebook, social media, all of that. We are right here. Our office is at 1232 Turner, right in the heart of Old Town.
Swing by and say hi to Robert.
Robert, yes. Our director. But yeah, we're easily accessible. Find us. We're always willing to have a conversation and discuss what's happening in Old Town.
Yeah, I love it. Such a fun community here, a fun district with amazing people. I've been talking with two of these amazing people, Ben and Jamie from the Old Town Commercial Association here in Old Town Lansing. I want to thank you guys, one, for being here today, and two, for all the great work you're doing for your community here in Old Town.
Yeah, and if I can make one more plug. So, we've been through the end of a pandemic, or hopefully what we call the end of a pandemic.
Fingers crossed.
We were celebrating a milestone last year, and we weren't able to celebrate. So you'll see marketing this year coming across for our 25th +1 anniversary.
Yay!
So in the spirit of Old Town, we keep it quirky. If we missed our big milestone, we're going to celebrate it the next year.
Yeah.
And so look forward to some different things coming along to highlight many of our businesses along our corridor, some of our pioneers and those types of things. And then also follow our social media. We have a big push right now for a lot of historical data that is coming across, which is really, really interesting. And we've got a person on our board who is working hard on doing that. Mark Chamberlain is pulling together a lot of information to share the history of Old Town with the community.
Very, very cool. So again, Ben and Jamie, thank you so much. You guys are doing great here in Old Town.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.